Overlord Season 4 Episode 5, and in this episode we got the continuation of what happened in the last episode. Not a straight continuation because in the last episode we saw Ainz fight the Warrior King, and this episode we see that, well, basically Ainz visiting the Dwarf Kingdom, so that is why I say it is not a straight continuation of the episode, but it is still a continuation because in the last episode we learned a little bit of the dwarves, about what they do, where they are, and in this episode we actually got to see the dwarves, or a dwarf because there was only one. So yeah, that is the main focus of this episode, and there are a couple of, well, things that are also worth mentioning that happen in this episode, because I think although they may not have that much impact on the story, they speak a lot about the characters that are portrayed in those specific scenes that I'm going to talk about. So the episode starts by Albedo and Demiurge having a talk, and it is actually a pretty interesting talk because many people might consider this talk to be, well, not transcendental to the whole story of Overlord Season 4, and it might be the case, but the talk itself, the interaction between Demiurge and Albedo actually speaks a lot about, especially Demiurge's personality, because in that exchange we got to see how Demiurge will act if Ainz is not satisfied with his work, because, well, one of the things that Albedo told Demiurge is that maybe it could be the case that Ainz is actually not too satisfied with whatever Demiurge's plan is, because he's been naming him a lot in his talks. So yeah, that could also be the case, especially because he went to the Empire and made the Empire make a request of being a vassal state to the Sorcerer Kingdom. Albedo tells Demiurge if he had a plan to make the Empire a vassal state, and of course Demiurge tells her that yeah, but he was not going to follow through because that would be too embarrassing to make Ainz basically do all the work, and it would take 1 month. And then Albedo confesses that, well, Ainz actually did it, and actually did it only in 3 days while he was visiting the Empire. So Demiurge is kind of surprised and embarrassed at the same time because he didn't think that Ainz would do that. And of course Albedo also tells Demiurge that, well, maybe he's being a little too reserved with what he's doing with his plan of world domination, because she tells him that he needs to be more open with what he's doing, because I mean, it is actually true that he's being too reserved, because at this moment Ainz is actually too in the dark with what Demiurge is doing. He doesn't actually know whatever plans Demiurge is doing, which I know Demiurge is actually doing because he doesn't want to bother Ainz with the petty small things, or what he considers to be petty and small things, insignificant things to Ainz. So that is why he's not doing it. That is why he's being reserved, and maybe with the tip that Albedo gave him, he will actually be more open now from here on out. So let's see if that actually proves to be helpful. And apparently one of the missions that Demiurge is having right now is basically a plan to make the theocracy pay in a way. I say pay in a way because it is actually more of ruin them, dominate them, attack them, That is basically the talk they had in the first part of the episode. A pretty interesting talk, if I'm being honest. Many people might not consider it like that, but yeah, it is actually pretty good considering the topic that it was talked about. So that is the first part of the episode, and then we get to the second part of the episode, and I would say this is the second main focus of the episode. The main focus, being of course, visiting the dwarves, learning a little bit more about the dwarves. But the second focus of the episode would be Shalltear, would be focused around Shalltear, and basically her trying to overcome being ashamed of herself, being embarrassed of herself, because as we saw in the first season, she was basically mind controlled by the theocracy. Well, we think was the theocracy, by a world item apparently, and she's still embarrassed by that because of course she went wild, she attacked Ainz, and everybody doesn't trust her, or a lot of people don't trust her. For example, Albedo, Demiurge don't actually trust her that much. So yeah, right now she's feeling, well, down because she's not feeling that useful to Ainz, to the guild. And of course, throughout the whole episode, her mentality is trying to prove herself to be useful to Ainz. And that is what we see because, for example, at the end of the episode when she was fighting the Guagoa or something like that, beast throughout her mind all that time was basically trying to prove herself to Ainz that she's worth something to him. And of course, that is always the main mentality that she has. But now she's even more persistent with that because, like I said already, she's not feeling that useful to the guild, to Ainz especially. So yeah, she's trying to prove all the time that she's actually useful. And in a way, she's fighting her own problems because in the world of Overlord, everybody has their own problems, his own problems. But in this episode, we actually see Shalltear's in broad light, explicit what her problems are. And hopefully she can overcome them. But yeah, that is what the second focus of the episode was. And she even gets a couple of tips, for example, to basically write down and observe what Ainz is doing throughout the whole episode. And the main focus of the mission, of course, was to see and learn about the dwarves. But the second focus of the mission was to apparently to let Shalltear experience the outside world, to let her experience more scenarios, more things, because you know, being in the tomb of Nazareth all day can be a good and a bad way in a sense, because she's not experiencing the outside world. She needs more variation in her life, and that is the main focus of Ainz, or not the main focus, but one of the focuses of Ainz, carrying her along in the mission to visiting the Dwarves. So yeah, and that is why she's trying to improve herself, trying to be proven useful, writing down whatever Ainz is doing, and basically absorbing everything she can from this mission. And let's see if she can actually prove those things to be useful. Now to the main focus of the episode, which is of course visiting the Dwarves, learning about the Dwarves, which they do in this episode with the help of the Lizard Man. And they visit the Dwarves. They learn that, well, Ainz learns that the Dwarves apparently moved from the current city that's abandoned because they were getting attacked by the beast we saw at the end, the Quagoa or something like that. And apparently these creatures are creatures that feed from metals since they are little, so that is why the reason they attack the dwarves settlements, because you know, they use metals a lot for their runes and weapons. We also learned that the dwarves stopped producing weapons produced from runes 200 years ago because, you know, the practice died out, because apparently you can also enchant or power up weapons by using magic, by being a magic caster. And because it is easier to do that than, you know, doing rune crafting, well, the practice died out, and there are now so little people doing that is why there are not that many weapons made from runes. And there is a benefit, of course, for making weapons from runes, which apparently it is explained in the episode, that is cheaper, because making weapons from magic can actually cost a lot of materials and, you know, magic, and you need to be experienced. And who knows, maybe in future episodes we may actually see another benefit exclusive to making weapons from runes. So yeah, we learned that, and now Ainz's mission is to make everything possible for the dwarves to still make the weapons from runes, because that is what Ainz wants. Ainz wants weapons made from runes. But of course, to do that, he will actually have to protect the dwarves, because at the end of the episode we learned that the Quagoa are actually about to attack the dwarves in the North City. So let's see if Ainz can save them. Of course, let's be honest, he will actually be able to save them. But yeah, that is what the main focus of the episode is. We see that, well, the dwarves are actually kind people. They're actually nice people. I don't know what everybody else was expecting from the dwarves, but to be honest, I actually had this image of them being actually nice people, you know, being courteous and things of that nature. And it actually came true, because we actually see, well, at least the dwarf in this episode, that he's actually a nice person. So yeah, that is actually interesting to see. Let's see if the creatures that are in this episode, the Quagoa, are actually stronger than what they are shown to be in this episode, because they are really weak, to be honest. I mean, everything compared to the people of the Tomb of Nazareth is actually pretty weak, but maybe the actual creatures that are attacking the northern city can be actually a little bit more, you know, more powerful, stronger than this one, because Shalltear basically one-shots everyone, and she even gets hits a couple of times, but she doesn't actually take damage at all. And of course, trying to prove herself to be useful, she will not fail to capture them. them. And yeah, I mean, that is basically what happened throughout the whole episode. We got a couple of funny scenes when Ainz got to sit down on Concutus. So yeah, that was actually so funny. And I don't know what will happen in the next episode, how things will go down. If I were to speculate, I would say that they are of course going to save the dwarves from the northern city. They are going to able, and by them I mean Ainz is going to be able to, come to agreement with the dwarves to be able to produce weapons for him. He already came to an agreement with the dwarf that was introduced in this episode, Gondo, if I'm not mistaken. That is his name. So maybe in the next episode he can make a deal with all the other dwarves. So yeah, that is what I think will happen in the next episode. Maybe we'll see a little bit more from Demiurge and what he's doing in action actually, because we learn a little bit in this episode by words of what he's doing, but maybe we will actually get to see what he's doing in action or the results of his plans. So yeah, that is everything for me, and I guess I'll see you all in the next episode review.